Great. As we're transitioning out here, we're going to have our second panel with the rest of our champions. Y'all can come on up. And thank you, Shelley, for moderating our panel. There will be additional time for Q&A after the next panel, so if folks have questions that you didn't get to ask of this particular panel, we will have some time at the end. Our moderator for our second panel, we're very excited to have Ms. Lisa Pelstring. She's an advisor on urban environmental issues in the Office of the Deputy Secretary of Interior. So join me in welcoming our moderator, Lisa Pelstring.
Thank you very much, Lindsay, and thank you to the White House for making this forum happen, and thank you to you guys for really making it happen. This may sound hokey, but we really are inspired by your work. I know that Shelley and I are going to go back to our offices, and it gives us a little bit more push, and it's wonderful to have you here. I also want to briefly tell you why Department of the Interior is moderating a panel on greening our cities. I'm sure some of you are wondering, you're thinking Grand Canyon, you're thinking vast lands in the West, water resource management. But we are more than that. We are so much more. We do urban parks, we do urban gardens, we do rain gardens, we do green streets, river access in cities, daylighting and restoring urban streams. What am I missing? Creating riverwalk trails, restoring wildlife habitat in cities. It's a long list. So we're not just those iconic national parks that some of you have visited. We do so much. And I know that thanks to our leadership, both the President and Secretary Salazar, Deputy Secretary David Hayes, they fundamentally get that we have to do more of those kinds of projects. We get that. We have to do more for the 80% and growing of the US population that is now living in metropolitan areas. It's growing, it's 83%, I think is the exact stat. So we're honored today to be a part of this forum, the Department of Interior, and I'm gonna ask each of the panelists to just speak a little bit briefly before we get into the discussion about their projects and work.
Shall I start?
Yes, go ahead.
Well, I'm Dr. Jackie Cole, and I have been, you all heard when we made the introductions, that I am here on behalf of the efforts that Galveston has made to reforest after Hurricane Ike. It's very appropriate the Department of Interior is here because we could not have done it without the partnership that we had with the Texas Forest Service, which comes in and their urban forest, which came in and helped us to develop a template for responding to this disaster. Disasters are going to occur more and more frequently. I saw an article coming out of the United Nations where they've begun to call climate change, not climate change anymore, but global weirding. The weather is getting weirder and weirder, and more disasters are going to occur, and we are going to need to be able to respond to those. Unfortunately, we didn't have a template for responding to ours and have had to learn it from the ground up and work through it. And the National Arbor Day Foundation feels that what we did, the work that we did, has the potential to provide a model for other communities that may have to suffer through a disaster like this. And we're going to be working with them to try to formulate sort of a cookbook for how to respond when you have an urban disaster. Our disaster was not like most disasters in that you come out afterwards and the trees are down and the limbs are broken and everything is blown apart. Ours was more of a die in place from saltwater intrusion. And we had our Hurricane Ike flooded Galveston with a 14-foot storm surge. We had a drought prior to the storm, so the water was sitting on the trees prior to the rain. And after the storm left and the rain stopped, the water was still sitting on the trees. And so we had what we were afraid was a whole city of dead trees following the storm, but we waited 6 months to see if they were going to come back in the spring. And unfortunately, they did not. So then we had to go through the process of getting FEMA, which fortunately they agreed to take down the trees for us, but there's been no money to cut the trees back. So the community went through the process of losing their entire forest. I shouldn't say entire. Many parts of the city, it was the entire forest. On the island of Galveston, we lost 50% of the trees, over 40,000 trees, which is 50%. So if you can imagine waking up one day and having no trees at all in your neighborhood, then you understand what we went through. Oh, this is our Grand Boulevard, Broadway. And you can see these are trees that were planted after the 1900 storm, which was the largest natural disaster in the city, in the United States history. So these trees have come down, and we're now in the process of trying to replant. There's a couple of lessons that we learned that I'd like to put out there for everybody. One is that when all this comes down, there is a huge amount of debris, and we had the debris from the storms, from the people's houses and the stuff inside our homes that was gone. But then we had all the debris from the trees. The citizens of Galveston refused to allow that to go to the landfills. And every speck of wood that came down from the trees was used in a beneficial use. So that is a lesson that other communities needs to know, and we were able to accomplish that by working with the partners that we had, our deconstruction guys, the FEMA people, and so forth. And the way we were able to accomplish it was because we found people that wanted this wood where it didn't cost any more for FEMA to dispose of it than it would have cost had they gone to the landfill. And so we had wood that went to Connecticut to help rebuild an ancient whaling ship. We had, and some of you all got brochures, many of the people had the trees cut so that they could later be carved into statues in place. It's now the #2 tourist attraction in Galveston after the beach. And we had the final dregs of it went to a company that was either going to use it for mulch or biofuel. So this is, I think, is critical, especially when you consider that it's a carbon issue as well. And then the other thing two other lessons that I would say is to make sure that you partner up with your agencies that are around. We couldn't have done it without that, and that's been a common theme in all of these discussions. And the last one is that I would like to ask for anybody that has anything to say in this, that trees be shifted over from being thought of as beautification and landscaping to being thought of as infrastructure. We cannot live without trees. Thank you very much. They clean our air, they filter our waters, they help with stormwater runoff, they lower asthma, they increase our retail values. People will spend more when they shop in an area that is surrounded by trees. They raise our real estate value. They lower crime levels. There's all kinds of things that they do that we don't. They lower our energy levels, so they reduce the amount of money that we spend on energy. If the thinking could be shifted over to the trees being infrastructure, then all the programs are going to change. You cannot do an urban program without trees being included. They'll be eligible for restoration after a disaster, just like your water treatment plant would be eligible for restoration. Trees would also be eligible for restoration. And so there is just that one shift, They're no longer beautification. They're critical infrastructure. Thank you.
That was well said.
Yeah, thank you. My name is Steve Montel, and I work with the Center for Community Progress in Flint, Michigan. The center is a national nonprofit, but the story I work on is the Flint story. And I'm sure you guys are all relatively familiar with the Flint story. There's few communities that have been harder hit over the last few decades than Flint, Michigan, both socially and economically. So the piece of this story that I work on is vacant industrial brownfields, of which our relatively small city has about 1,000 acres of vacant industrial brownfields. So these are sort of concrete and asphalt slabs that the buildings have all disappeared from. And these are sites that form the core of Flint's basic economy, the auto industry. And what we need to transition to is finding a way that these sites form the core of a new economy, okay? And one of the mistakes we make is to treat these sites all the same, right? You can imagine 1,000 acres of brownfield has a lot of diversity within those 1,000 acres. And we need to divide them out and create systems for each of those. Specifically, the project that I spend the most time working on is this project called Chevy in the Hole. This is an old factory site that sits in a river valley immediately 2 blocks west of downtown Flint. And it's a true example of an orphan brownfield site. So this was where the lumber industry grew up, this is where the carriage industry grew up, and this is where the auto industry formed itself. And now it's vacant, and it has fallen through the cracks entirely. So there's no GM Racer Trust, there's no big pot of federal money waiting to clean these things up. They're true orphans. And we have acres and acres of these things in Flint, along with every other type of brownfield you can imagine. But this site that truly sits at the center of our sort of institutional corridor for the city sits in the middle of about $300 million of investment over the last 5 years. So on the one hand, you have tremendous investment that goes into our hospitals, our universities, and our downtown, and then you have this sort of pulling factor of this big industrial brownfield right in the middle of it, right? So it's sort of confusing as you look at this thing, right? So what we decided to do is stop the draining momentum of this site and get to work on it, okay? So the standard rules for revitalizing brownfields don't work on these sites, okay? You sort of need to rewrite the rule book each time you develop one of these sites. So about 2 years ago, that's the process we laid out, is rewriting the rule book for how to do a site like this, okay? So Mayor Dane Walling, mayor of the city of Flint, was just elected, and we convinced him to sit down and make a point of no return decision, which is either the community needs to embrace this site and own it and begin to move it forward, or it's likely to sit vacant for another decade or two. And that was unacceptable, and he took ownership of the site on behalf of the city and with a whole lot of leadership from our city council and our economic development corporation, along with our county treasurer's office and our land bank authority. The C.S. Mott Foundation is a local funder. They actually pay me to do the work that I do, so I'm very thankful for them. And some grassroots organizations that form a Flint River Corridor Alliance, which are your smaller nonprofits that sort of come together to work on this. And what we did is we reached out to the administration. The Obama administration was very young at that time, so we reached out to Ed Montgomery, who was organizing some work in auto communities, and has since been replaced by Jay Williams, who was a great friend of Flint. And we said, how do we begin this process? And they got us in touch with Matty Stanislaus, who is assistant administrator for EPA, and he came to Flint and he looked at these sites, and everyone sort of agreed, yeah, the rule book doesn't work, and we need to figure out exactly how to write a new rule book. So with David Lloyd from the Brownfields program, and then Matt Didier from Region 5 Brownfields program, set out to take some federal pots of money that were inaccessible for a site like this and rewrite the book so that we could access those funds. And we've applied for other funding through the U.S. Forest Service. You can tell there's a lot of federal money coming in here, right? You can imagine in Flint's financial situation, we don't have local money to put in here. So the federal partnerships were absolutely crucial to this. So what I really have to say is there could be any number of folks from the community who sort of sit in this seat. I guess I'm just lucky enough to have gotten the call up, right? But essentially what we were able to do is about 3 weeks ago, we broke ground on the site, and we're starting phase 1 of a bioremediation project. In the last couple of weeks, we've planted about 1,200 trees in the ground to on-site redevelop and turn this into an attractive greenway. And then some of the side benefits to that is, we have a handful of our operating engineers that came out of the local hall to, I don't think they know that they're on a green job yet, but they are. To them it's just tearing up concrete and, asphalt and other things, but they're definitely on a green job there. And we've started to take what is, the mayor always says, and I agree with him, that on any project like this, momentum is zero. And it doesn't take a big push, though, to get people excited about it. So that's what we've seen on the project. We're moving forward. We have a few $1 million set to go. And we'll find the rest of the money as we go, So that's kind of our attitude on this, is just start moving the ball forward.
Great, thank you.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. I would like to thank President Obama for having Champions of Change. What a great opportunity for me, Marion Robidas, to come and share the works of so many others. As everyone is saying, it's got to be a partnership. This is not something that you can do alone. One of the biggest reasons green for green, the money comes from different sources, and it's so important. So first, just a quick shout out to the hardworking teachers. I am an elementary school principal, Jonestown Elementary in the Northern Lebanon School District, just west of Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. And my teachers allow me to bring my other partners in to abuse them as we bring our children out into the real world for some real place-based learning. So two other people that I would like to recognize, and George Kaufman was introduced earlier. George has been a longstanding mayor of Jonestown and has built an entire park under his leadership and brought grants to Jonestown Elementary for the benefit of the students. And our current mayor, Tyler Longenecker, also very much is supportive, but my initiatives were much more with George. Estelle Rupert from the State Department of Conservation and Natural Resources. Estelle has been extremely helpful and beneficial in getting grants that we were able to use in the school district to do these extra initiatives, because as you all know, there's just not a lot of money right now in education for extra things. So Estelle actually put together a program the book is called Pennsylvania Land Choices, and it really goes back to, as many of you were talking about, local government and the power of people in local government. Pennsylvania has, I think it's 2,561 local municipalities. And these are the people that control what happens with the land. How are we going to use our land? How are we going to use our water? And many of our students will not ever, grow up to be president of the United States, only because of the ratio, but many will be able to grow up and become very beneficial members of local government. And so we need to start now, as Brian said, we need to start now bringing them to the community and bringing the community to them. And that is what we have been able to do with the ideas and the grant money from the outside, our partners from the other organizations. The children have learned about the watershed, the Chesapeake Bay watershed. In Jonestown, they're having a serious problem with stormwater. It's one of the things that President Obama has more or less directed townships and communities to look at, and air quality. And our children have built rain gardens, and I have to be honest, before we did that, I really couldn't have told you what a rain garden was. So I'm learning along with them, and they've done studies with air quality, stream studies, and we also, Mayor Kaufman worked very hard for safe routes to school. How can we get more children to walk and ride their bikes to school? What do we have to do in the community to make it safer for children to be able to do that? We had a group of students that measured how many calories were burned to walk from one place, and this is 6th graders, so they're starting to care about their health and things like that. So just talking about what are the health benefits of walking and that type of thing, and then measuring air quality. We have a dismissal system where the cars line up out front, and so they're sitting there for a while with the engines running. What is the difference with the pollution during dismissal or arrival time, and then in the middle of the day when there are no cars there? So it is exciting to see the children out there with hands-on learning in a way that you just cannot do it in the classroom. So again, I appreciate being selected, but it's really a total community, state and local government, and also Jonestown, school district employees as well. So thank you very much, And if you have any questions, then you may ask later.
Good afternoon. I'm Cynthia Barber, and I bring you greetings from Tallahassee, Florida, the capital city of Florida. And I'm here today with my mayor, who's been named a Green Mayor, Mayor Marks, from Tallahassee, Florida, and my city manager, Anita Favors-Thompson. This is really a great honor, and I would like to thank the administration for recognizing me. But I certainly stand here as a representative of nearly 3,000 employees, a very dedicated and loyal group of elected officials and appointed officials and my professional peers who embraced the idea of sustainability and really made these projects happen. I am the city's first sustainability director as well. I've been involved in environmental regulatory compliance for about 13 years, but the sustainability piece was new. And I wish I could tell you that the day that the city manager notified me that I was the new sustainability director for the government, I was overjoyed. That's just not the case. However, I put on my badge and I put on my stripes and I became the main chief tree hugger for the government, the queen of green, and some other names that I'm sure my peers have called me that I can't share with you today. But it's been an outstanding journey, and it's actually, as I think about it, to be recognized for something that not only that I love to do, but for something that I believe is my responsibility to do. I think it's all of our responsibilities to preserve an environment for our children, my grandson, Jaden Christopher Barber, and his children and grandchildren one day. So for that honor, I'm very thankful and grateful to represent the city. We are the first gold certified green city in Florida. The mayor likes to tell everybody that. And we are hopeful to be the first platinum certified green city in Florida. But sustainability, the name and the use of that may be new for us, but the practices that constitute sustainability certainly aren't new. We have a long-standing history of being really good environmental stewards. We've been recognized on the national and very, very recently international, regional, local, state level. So we're very fortunate in that regard. I'd like to share with you just a few of the programs that we've implemented, because if the biggest challenge for me today is to say anything in 3 minutes. So I know the folks in Tallahassee are wondering, how is she going to do this? But to particularly talk about what we've achieved in sustainability. Some of the innovative programs that I think are worth sharing, actually I think all of them are worth sharing, but some of the ones that are more innovative. When you talk about the programs that we've done over the years and doing them in a more traditional fashion, where perhaps you would conduct an energy audit and you would leave a household with a number of changes that you would hope that they would make, and not really having a way to determine how successful you were in implementing that program. Well, we implemented a REACH program. It's actually a community-based program where we selected full neighborhoods, targeted neighborhoods, go in and make a difference in a full neighborhood. We took a team of folks who actually not only identified what types of changes could and should be made, but also actually did some of the work that was required. So when we left that home, we knew that we were actually putting in places measures that would actually improve the energy efficiency of homes and the water conservation and those types of measures in homes. Also, a green building incentive program that we implemented really with some grant funding that we received from the Department of Energy, so we're very grateful for that. That program, we were able to provide incentives to local builders at a time when no one really was building homes, but to incent them to build, period, but then to build green. We thought, how could we do that? So we came up with an incentive program where when we coupled that with our energy efficiency related rebates, we were able to provide approximately $7,000 towards building green. We were able to support nearly 60 homes, doing the development of 60 green homes, doing that. Brownfields redevelopment, like a lot of communities, land is one of those things that's just limited. We just aren't getting any more. And like a lot of communities, there are brownfield areas in those communities which are really in prime, valuable locations. And so unless we redevelop those lands, they basically just sit there and they're wasted. In our community, we happen to have a site that is near downtown called the Gain Street area. We're revitalizing that area we've received for our brownfield program as well as for a cleanup site, a Superfund cleanup site in downtown called the Cascade Park Project. We received a total between the two of them approximately $9 million in grant funding for those projects. The Cascade Park project will become a state-of-the-art not only stormwater project, but it will also be a park that we expect to improve economic development in the area as well as in recreation and enjoyment for our citizens in the community. Green Fleet Shop, I think we have an awesome fleet shop. They've created a lot of innovations in that organization, in that particular department, including making biodiesel fuel from chicken fat. Those kinds of things, a collection of oils from community restaurants to support the program. Staff that actually innovated and created converted a vehicle from a diesel vehicle to an electric vehicle. It was going to be out of service. It was an older vehicle, but to take that vehicle and give it new life, those kinds of things. And we have a fuel conservation and anti-idling policy. And that the intent is to reduce the impacts of unnecessary idling and vehicle use, to improve air quality, to reduce costs, and extend the life of vehicles. And our fleet department, along with the rest of the government, have done a number of things. But our fleet department has innovated and created a process to address excessive idling in police vehicles, because we know that those kinds of things are very difficult and challenging to reduce it. But given that I'm limited to 3 minutes and I see the fingers telling me that I'm there, I'll stop now, and hopefully you'll have questions that I can address.
Good afternoon, everybody. Cynthia and Marion and Steve and Jackie and Brian and Deborah and Lindsay and Eric is somewhere. It's an honor to be on a platform with each of you and to share in this day. And Lindsay, I also want to say, Lindsay, I want to say thank you very much for all the work you did to make this trip so easy. Thank you so much. And I didn't bring a mayor. Mayor Hancock was busy, so I went up to him and I asked my beautiful wife, Nancy, to be here today. Would you stand, please, Nancy? Nope. Not going to do it, and I'm going to be in trouble when I get done here today. But Nancy is a 30-year practicing RN, and there's no greater workforce in the world than nurses in terms of giving care to each and every one of us. Amen. Amen. Thank you very much. This is a great honor for me, but I accept it on behalf of my foundation. I accept it on behalf of an amazing board, and I have a couple of my staff, Lisa and Jolyn. Cindy was unable to go online or on screen or on Twitter or whatever the heck it is that they can do. But, the sign of a successful man is someone who surrounds himself with people smarter than he is, and that makes me a bloody genius, or as close as I can possibly get. So I'm honored to be here, and also the thousands and thousands of folks over the last 38 years that have helped the Greenway Foundation be the entity that it is. When you run a 501c3, you're only as successful as your supporters allow you to be. My foundation has a philosophy which is no power is all power. Excuse me, I'm trying to find that balance here between not spitting into the mic and being heard. No power is all power. We have absolutely no authority at the Greenway Foundation by statute or by resolution or ordinance to do anything. We were formed in 1974 by my father, Joe Shoemaker, who's 88 years young. And like my father, both he and I did a sentence or two in the state legislature a few years ago. And what being in the elected arena allows you to do is build friendships and partnerships at all levels. And we've had a remarkable relationship with 4 governors over our 38 years, with 5 mayors, countless council and commission members, and the members of our congressional delegation have been and continue to be extremely supportive of Denver South Platte River. No one more supportive than former United States Senator and now Colorado's own Secretary of Interior, Ken Salazar. And Ken continues to champion the environment, including his America's Great Outdoors initiative, which I know you know all about. We have a belief at the Greenway Foundation, a couple different beliefs. One is the power of the 4 Ps, which is the public, private, political, and philanthropic communities. If you look at that 4-legged stool, and are able to strengthen each and every one of its legs, that's how you succeed. You have to have, and the mayors here know this, you have to have the political sector behind you. You have to have the foundation and donation community behind you. You have to have individual citizens. And of course, you have to partner with the public sector. The Greenway Foundation doesn't own a river. The Greenway Foundation doesn't own a trail or a blade of grass. It's Denver's and Denver metro area's waterway, and we're just a caretaker and a partaker in its benefit. The South Platte River is a very small river. Mark Twain once called it too thick to drink, too thin to plow, a bothersome, pestiferous, nothing of a river. If you stood it on end, it would be a joke to call it a river at all, and he wasn't far from the truth 38 years ago. Our little river in tropical Colorado was ecologically dead. It was lethal to consume. And like so many other cities around the world, when you can pipe underground plumbing into a waterway, what can't you bring to a waterway? So Denver's river was literally a flowing toilet. And what happened was the less than desirable aspects that come along a river when that happens came to our river. There were no parks, there were no trails. There were landfill dump sites, there were maintenance yards, there were junk yards, there were car crusher sites. And literally the worst place of all in Denver's South Platte River was where Cherry Creek meets the river, which ironically is Denver's birthplace. And now it is at the heart of the Central Platte Valley. And you've heard the term green equals green. This is true. When you invest in your environmental and your recreational infrastructure, you see immediate tangential economic benefits. And in Denver's case, through countless partners, our foundation has been able to leverage over $100 million of trail, park, waterway, recreation improvements, and that has spawned conservatively, as you heard, over $10 billion of residential, retail, commercial, sports venue benefits. The football stadium that will be showing off the greatest quarterback in the NFL this coming year, the Denver Broncos, not that we're biased, is right alongside the South Platte River, and the next World Series champs, Colorado Rockies, are right alongside the South Platte River. So what was Denver's backyard is truly its front yard. Let me finish with this. In addition to the work we do physically on the river, I'm a former school teacher. And Brian, the work you're doing is just amazing. And you are right, sir, and that is what we continue to learn as adults. Children come home from first grade and teach us. And it's a marvelous transitional change. We hear all the time about what's wrong with today's generation. I'm a 57-year-old, believe me, back in the 60s and 70s. What's wrong with that kid came up a lot. So Brian, you're right. Today's kids are our future, and that's why we have a youth education and youth employment program at the Greenway Foundation. We bring over 6,000 elementary-age kids down to the river in an integrated program within the school's curriculum, and we relate the river to science and to math and to art and to history and to literature, so that generations of today will not do what generations of yesterday did, and that is turn their back on the river. We also have summer camps that bring 600 kids down, and we employ over 16 high school and college-age kids to serve as river rangers. Kids learn a lot better from a 16-year-old than they do from a 60-year-old. And it's also very important that the world of environmental education becomes less homogeneous than it is today. We teach children of every color, every hue, every background on the river, but what we need to do is have those teachers that teach them represent their background and their culture and their reality to a higher degree. And then we also, in closing, we do events. We like to party at the Greenway Foundation, and so we have free jazz concerts down on the river. We have free movies. And we also do twice a year, in the spring on Earth Day and in the fall on National Public Lands Day, what we call river sweeps. We have a spring and a fall river sweep. We had over 1,200 citizens this past Saturday on Earth Day walk up and down, float up and down, get in and out of the river, and do remarkable work from cleanup to planting and preparation for the spring. And then we also have a 1-mile benefit run. There's an old saying, or maybe not so old, where the young kid says, "I'd rather play indoors because the outlets are closer." And whether that's fact or folklore, we know what the challenges are today for kids to get out and get healthy. So we do a 1-mile run every year. We did it last year, and over 1,000 children aged 12 or younger ran a solid mile, and they got to finish right on the 50-yard line of our football stadium. It's now called Sports Authority Field this week. And with that, it's an honor to be here. We're a small nonprofit, but we have a little bit of energy and a little bit of enthusiasm, and it's an honor to be in such great company. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff, and thank you, all of the panelists. Wow, is all I can say. There's so many, I have so many questions for you, and some of the comments that you made really resonated. The fact that we need to stop looking at urban parks and green space and trails and river access as amenities. They're not amenities. They're an issue of public health when you look at obesity rates and asthma rates, and taking trees and looking at them as infrastructure. And partnerships, the theme throughout has been partnerships. And one question I have for all of you really is what can we do better in the federal government? We work with many of your communities. I think, Steve, you alluded to it a little bit with your new book of how to do things.
We didn't actually write it down, by the way. So.
Oh, well, you'll have to do that.
We're in process. We're in process.
Okay. But I really do think this is a great opportunity for us to learn from you all about what we can do better.
Well, on the federal partnership front, real quick, the biggest obstacle for most folks to be able to receive services from the federal government, I believe, is not having a direct point of contact within agencies. So what we have found is that even in what you would consider to be sort of bureaucratic cubicle land, right? These massive buildings of 10 floors of cubicles, there are folks in there that are really very willing to help. They just never get asked. So in Flint, we've made it a point to really ask, sort of ridiculously over-ask for assistance from the federal agencies. And we found that when we do that, we get a whole bunch of help. EPA Region 5 is a good example. We harass those people endlessly, and they continue to respond. But in Interior, I wouldn't know who to call in Interior, right? So it may take me a week or 2 weeks to figure out who it is to contact. So from a federal perspective, identifying who those are and making them more widely known would be helpful.
Mm-hmm. Great, thank you. I think, Jeff, you had a comment?
I was asked the same question at a recent AGO conference that the White House put on it, and what I said then, I'll repeat now, 2 quick things. Number one, the more the federal government can do to provide funding directly to the local community and trusts its infrastructure, trust its design, trust its planners, trust its engineers, trust its landscape architects, and when a vetted, completed plan for a physical improvement is in place, spend time reviewing and looking it over and making sure T's are crossed and I's are dotted, but the more the funds can flow directly to the locals and let the locals control the project with federal engagement, the better. If it can be a local-led and federal partnered versus federal-led and local partnered, 2 things will happen. It will take less time and it will cost less money. And the second thing is, if there is a way for the various, and this is probably naive on my part, but if there's a way for the federal government to come up with what local supporting entities do in communities, which is something as simple as a common grant form, if there could be a common application form, and I'm trying to be respectful, President Obama here. Okay, if there could be a common language, because right now when we apply, and I'm not picking on anybody, when we apply to the Army Corps of Engineers, I write it in Latin, and when I apply to EPA, I write it in German, and when I apply to Interior, I write it in Spanish, and I'm joking, but I'm not. If there was a way to centralize and organize so that what I could do, if I want to ask money from 6 different federal agencies, if I could write one grant and tweak it here and tweak it there, as versus having to write 6 or 7 different separate grants, save time, save money, and be more effective. So those are 2 things, as naive as they may sound, that could help.
Thank you. Cynthia, did you want to comment?
Sorry. Yes. I just wanted to say we have been very fortunate in the grant funding that we've received, and I agree with most of what everybody said in terms of some of the changes that can be made. So what I really want to do is encourage President Obama and the administration to continue to fund these projects. It's not throwing good money after bad. The money really makes a difference in our communities. It improves the quality of life. It's not chasing some mythical fix to climate change that doesn't exist. These are real projects that put people to work and improve the quality of life for our citizens. So I just want to encourage them to continue to support the funding, because we have been very fortunate in the funding we've received.
Thank you. Jackie?
Well, I mentioned head on what I wanted, which was that trees be considered infrastructure, because that shift is going to make a huge difference in all the policy decisions and grant making that's done. One of my committee members, though, asked me to tell you that when FEMA takes down a tree after a disaster, if they'll ground the stump, it will make a big difference to us.
Just that little difference,
I mean, that's minute. I'm sorry, it wasn't a big pie in the sky thing.
No, I
but
mean, when you're talking about on-the-ground projects.
Since you ask.
Yeah, no, duly noted. Thank you. And another theme that I've heard mentioned today is environmental education and youth. And Marion, you raised it. We're educating the future leaders. And I just wonder, from your perspective, where do you find the time? Because with the standards testing and kids engaged in, spending 6 hours a day looking at a screen, how do you fit, hands-on learning into that?
It's something that Estelle and I talk about often because you do have to teach your curriculum, and you also are given, the teachers are given programs to use, which when you're teaching elementary school, you're covering possibly 7 subjects a day. So you value the program that is given to you. Luckily, at Jonestown, we have three classes at each grade level, but in the intermediate grades 4, 5, and 6, one teacher in each grade level teaches science and health, and that is very beneficial. And we do have a very hands-on approach to science to begin with, and to health as well. What we do is we take these things and work it into the curriculum, because stormwater fit very well into landforms and runoff and all of that type of thing. And then with the air quality, you work that into health and things like that. So that's how we use it. You have to try to match it up, and so that you're not covering something or covering things that are not necessary. I do want to point out, as totally off topic, I'm not sure if you caught it, but Jackie is a volunteer. She could be the only one of us
Amen.
that does this as volunteer work, and I just want to commend her very much for that.
Thank you very much.
And I did want to share a quote by Abe Lincoln. It goes that far back. The philosophy of the classroom today will be the philosophy of government tomorrow. So, that holds no matter what generation, no matter what year. We have to get the message to our students.
Thanks, Marianne.
Real quickly, very, very point-on question, because the challenge of today, we have to work harder in America to teach our children to be prepared for a more complicated society. That we know. But there are ways, and our program makes sure we utilize those ways. It's called SPRE, South Platte River Environmental Education. And what we do is make sure that when we teach kids outdoors on the river, we intertwine it with the school's math curriculum, and we teach them math lessons on the river. We teach them poetry on the river. They'll write a poem either before or while they're on a trip. They'll do water quality sampling, so then they have a science experiment. They learn about the history of our city and our state while on the river. So it is critical that it not just be a let's go outside and have fun on the river field trip. It's got to be something that intertwines with the demands that are there in terms of standards and testing. But it can happen. It's the kind of flexibility you need that Brian has talked about, so that 1 + 1 can equal 3.
Great, thank you. We have time for a few more questions? Okay, do we want to open it up to the audience? Is that okay? So please, I encourage you to walk down the aisle and ask some questions. While that's happening, quickly, can anyone talk about, these are all great projects, programs. One question I have for you is, how do we scale up? How do you take what you're doing and make it blossom across the country and ensure that after every storm we've got a core volunteer group that's planting trees, brownfields. I know we have a national brownfields program under EPA, but I think what you're doing in Flint is really innovative. What recommendations do you have for really scaling up your efforts?
My suggestion is get out of the way and support. Those are my It's, the people are out there. Actually, I would like to start back with a magazine article that came out of Lady Bird Johnson's Wildflower Center in Austin. Many years ago, the front cover of her magazine said, "How do we teach people to love the land?" Because if they love the land, then they're going to take care of it and do what they need to do. And so that goes back to a lot of these educational programs that are going on. But I think we have a generation out here that loves the land, and we need to let them work their work and support that work. And that's one of the things that this administration has been doing, both in not just as champions of change, but just in recognizing that the greening of the America, for all that word means, is critical to the future of not just America, but this world.
Great, thank you. And I want to turn it over to the mayor now.
Thank you very much. I'm John Marks, Mayor of the City of Tallahassee. I have not really a question, but more of a comment consistent with what I've been hearing. And your question was very, very important. What can the federal government do? I just want to reemphasize this. Having been on the Board of Trustees for the U.S. Conference of Mayors and President of Florida League of Cities, and I get a chance to interact with a number of local officials. Last week I was on a panel of other local officials, and the same question came up. And on that panel, there were two congressmen. And the question came, what can the federal government do? Send the money directly to the local governments. Trust me, we know what to do with the money. We know how to put it to work. We know how to develop infrastructure. What has been happening, even with the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act, the money went to the state governments. And the state government, what they did was fill their holes in their budget. And a lot of things that could have happened with that money just didn't happen because it was directed to the state governments, and the thought of the administration was that was the quickest way to get it to the local governments. It didn't work. It really didn't work. So this is a theme, and those two congresspersons that I was with, they say, well, that's good. That's a great idea, we'll do it. But it hasn't happened. And I think all the officials here, local officials, would agree that if you really want to do something, create jobs. You really want to create jobs? You really want to help the environment? Send that money directly to local governments. And that's not a question, but it's just a comment I wanted to make.
Great.
Lisa, I'm sorry.
I just wanted to point out as well that we do have John Carson back with us, the Director of the Office of Public Engagement. So if you have any questions for the administration as well, we have, we'll open it up for the previous panel of champs, our current panel of champs, and just broader questions if you have any other questions.
Great. Mr. Mayor, message heard. So thank you.
Lisa, could I make a quick comment on
Sure,
the mayor's comment, which is so accurate? And I think too, when you send, when the state government, and I don't know exactly how all of it works, but I know 2 years ago, our state took a big hit in the environmental area. So, you know, earmarking what that money is for when you're sending it, that it is for the environment and that type of thing would also be beneficial, so that whether it's the state or local government, it isn't used for other things to fill in the gaps and that type of thing, but is used, you know, for the environment. Thank you.
Great, sure. Yes.
Hi, everyone. I'm Taylor Campbell from Emerald Cities Collaborative. I just wanted to echo a question that was asked during the first panel. If you could speak on some of the challenges that you guys face in just getting through to people, and how you, if you have any special tactics or how you actually overcome those challenges. And that's for anybody who would want to speak up.
We have been fairly successful in Tallahassee, but I do believe in these economic times that sustainability professionals are going to have to work harder to build the economic case for sustainability. I think that while you can get commitment to the environment on a social level, that in these times we are having quite a bit more success when we can make the argument of economics and how it helps build the economy, how it puts people back to work, how it keeps people working. Also, having a real strategic plan, that's something that we're doing. I'd mentioned that we have been involved in sustainability for a very long time, but having a real strategic plan and making best use of the community resources and demonstrating to the citizens for whom we work that that's what we're doing, I think is very helpful. So we're in the early phases of coming up with a 3 to 5 year plan that we believe we can present to our public and get buy-in for. In fact, they're very involved in that process. A committee of 12 works with us to do that, as well as, of course, the commission, the mayor, the manager, and the administrators. But I think we have to figure out how to make that economic argument stronger than it has been.
Go ahead.
Luckily, at my age, I have people like Joel or Lisa or Cindy that know about social media, electronic media, tweeting and blogging and Facebooking and all these things that I'm completely remiss at knowing. But that is a key factor in terms of reaching out to the citizenry today. Trying to do so by phone, by mail, by note card is gone. We've gone from sending things out on a monthly basis by mail to doing one published printed publication every year, which is our annual report. And I also echo what Cynthia said. I think the other way that you keep your dream alive is you continue to look at what's next and what can happen tomorrow. And we've just finished a 5-year master planning effort, but the greatest success of that master planning effort beyond the plan itself is how it was created. Massive outreach to local neighborhoods, local citizenries, schools, churches, stakeholders, elected officials, so that it truly is the public's plan, not an entity's plan. So reaching out and grabbing people and bringing them in, both in person and by the internet, is key.
Great, thank you. Sir?
Yeah, hi, I'm Don Mathis, and I'm with the Emerald City Collaborative, and do community action during a regular day. And I'd like to build on the previous question, especially to Brian and Marion. I mean, quite honestly, there's a lot of ugliness and opposition to the kind of work that you do and the kind of things that we all do. It's manifest from everything in, for lack of a better term, the Ryan Republican budget and what it would do to domestic spending, to other kind of environmental pushbacks. And I'm just curious, again, especially to Brian and Marion that are working with the most pliable, susceptible population, how do you deal with some of that, kind of in-your-face ugliness that global warming and climate change is false and we really don't care about this and saving the land is good? I mean, you must run into that a lot, and how do you deal with that, and what strategies have you found to be effective? The economic one is a good point, that's a good start, but some of the attacks are so vindictive and so vicious. What's worked for you all in the field? And again, especially Brian and Marion, because you're clearly making it work with kids, and let me shake your hand, sir, because you're a hero.
Hey,
Thanks, man.
thanks for the question. And in my role as a public servant, I generally don't get engaged in public debate on those types of issues. That's for others. But I would say that our region, the environmental leadership team of our county, the Central Line of Council of Governments, and others, I think what we're doing is kind of leading by doing. We're not just talking about cleaning up stormwater, we're doing it. We're investing public resources in it and showing the benefits of health. Fish in streams that were dead not too long ago, okay? Nature coming back. So also, when it comes to recycling, we've gone with single stream recycling, okay? It's not an option, it's not something that we're talking about maybe looking at contracts in the future. Our entire area has single stream recycling. So if something's recyclable, whether it's in a school or at home, it can go into the same collection device and be taken out to our municipal recycling facility. So, I mentioned earlier about needing to engage folks and engaging the students, but really it comes down to our public leaders, the folks who are listening, who are here today. You need to lead by doing. Okay, this is a wonderful workshop. There's great ideas being expressed, but we need you all to take it back and do something with it, because through those examples, the public will learn and more communities will learn. It's a good thing. The economic environment makes it a necessity. Multinational corporations are doing it. When the health returns are incredible, increasing the health, reducing asthma is at academic proportions in our schools today as a direct result of the environment that we in past generations have created. So I typically don't get into the political debate,
But there's a couple examples, I think, that we, our community, the folks I'm here representing, which is our county, our region, our state, our school district, right? The Tools for Schools program with EPA and others, okay? We lead by doing, and we're challenging you all to do the same.
That's helpful. I mean, action trumps words is what I'm hearing, and that's really helpful. Thank you. Thanks. Marion, I mean,
The Northern Lebanon School District is very much about reaching out to community. So the only issues that we have is financial. The district is very much supportive of all of these projects. But for instance, we've been doing, one of our high school teachers runs stream studies, and she's been doing that since long before I've been there. But this year, it started to be questioned because of the cost of transportation. And that is it. Otherwise, the projects are looked at favorably, but it just is a financial burden. And then that's when you get questioned about doing or not doing.
Thank you. So this goes back to best practices and what we can do collectively to help. As Emerald Cities, we're looking at the MUSH markets, which is municipal, universities, schools, and hospitals. And so if all the agencies that are in our respective cities, be it GSA, DOL, EPA, work together to identify those buildings, we can actually collectively really spur job creation in these communities. So we need thought leader circles where we take community leaders, faith leaders, labor leaders in and put them in the room together on particular projects, MUSH market projects. You would really create jobs, you would green the communities, and you would create this cycle of cooperation because people are used to working in silos. And so to begin to break down those silos means that we have to do things differently. So we get the great pats on the back of a great program you have, but we don't get any money to actually fund programs like this because we're a new program. And so you have to have an existing program for 3 years to get workforce dollars. So you don't get that. So, but we still train anyway. So the more we can sit at the table together to figure out how do we really make this happen, let's identify all the government buildings in your city and let's get them working together.
Yeah, I just want to add on to that. I know through the President's America's Great Outdoors initiative and also through Administrator Lisa Jackson's Urban Waters Federal Partnership, we are trying very hard to work across our agencies, to work internally across our bureaus, and to respond to that request. And we, for instance, for Urban Waters Federal Partnership, we have 12 agencies working together at the table. And it's not just the same cast of characters. It's not just EPA, USDA, DOI. We've got the Economic Development Agency, we've got CDC, and we really are, and we've got the leadership and we've got the folks on the ground who are working on projects on the ground. So we really are trying to address that issue of working together and get the dollars to the local folks. But we have a long way to go, I know, so thanks for your comment. Sir, go ahead.
Yeah, I had one specific question. You opened it up to the White House, and I don't know if you can actually answer this, or I just wanted to get this message out. What was there a question? Open up questions to the administration?
Oh yes, Mr. Carson's here.
Okay. My question is in terms of the EPA and the regulations that they're applying within Central Appalachia, particularly to mountaintop removal. I'm not seeing anything on the ground in regards to either dumping money to restructure the economies in order to buffer the negative effects associated with those regulations. And kind of the catch-22 of what I've been finding the past 6 years that I've been working in the coal fields, and as a greenie, which is what the mayor calls me quite often, is post-mine land use, which is a fundamental component of mountaintop removal, has become kind of an essential component for transition for these particular areas. So I was wondering if there's any steps in that direction to address those issues. And if y'all don't have a plan, you've got a great one.
Well, I would love to connect with you right afterwards, because from the very beginning, I used to work at CEQ, who hosted this today. From the very beginning, as we were looking at changing the approach to mining coal in Appalachia and restricting, to a large degree, mountaintop mining, that question of how do we be partners in economic development was there from the beginning. I assume you're familiar with the Appalachian Regional Commission?
Yeah, we just met with them this morning.
Excellent. They've been the #1 partner on this front, and a role that the White House and CEQ and the whole team has played is ARC, with the strength that they have on the ground, the connections that they have on the ground. What we've really tried to do is empower them and connect them closely with other agencies to find every last opportunity. They held listening sessions all across the Appalachian region. They've brought people together for concrete solutions, but I'm really glad you met with them this morning, and we'll love to talk right afterwards.
We'll just throw it on the radar, and I don't want to take Central Appalachian Sustainable Economies that was just launched this past November has developed a very comprehensive strategy for answering those questions. So.
Well, excellent. And if I could just ask out to the rest of the community, actually anyone watching online, the folks here in the room, I think when people who care about the environment say things like we should restrict mountaintop mining in a place like Appalachia, I think it's also incumbent upon us to help Appalachia, West Virginia, these communities find next step, find economic development. So we've been trying to do that and would encourage everyone else to take a look at what's going on there and figure out how you can help do it.
Hi, my name is Monica Gilchrist. I am with ICLEI USA, Local Governments for Sustainability. We work with about 1,200 local governments across the U.S. and internationally supporting sustainability initiatives. I want to say kudos to both the staff here and to the local governments. You are all addressing the challenges that local governments across the country are facing every day, but you've hit them head on and you've answered a lot of the big questions. So congratulations, you're doing incredible work. My question to you today is, what are you doing to prepare your communities for what Jackie talked about, the climate impacts that are coming? And are there resources that you need out, in addition to the funding that we've heard a lot about, what are the other resources that would help you prepare your communities as you advance your sustainability initiatives and endeavors?
Our little group has worked with the City of Galveston to, when we designed our replanting, I mean, if you can imagine replanting your city from scratch, gave us, I mean, it was very sad, but it also gave us the opportunity to deal with the issues of sustainability. And so we went from picking species of trees which are better able to sustain drought resistant, storm resistant. So we picked species and made recommendations. We've made regulations where people are allowed to plant without a permit if they follow certain regulations which encourage them to put the right tree in the right place, and they plant off the recommended species list. We have a drought policy which we've put into place, which for our group, which affects how and when we plant our trees, and we are trying to get with the local and state governments to deal with their drought policies, which will allow us to conserve water when in a drought, which Texas has been in a drought. So how allow us to conserve water and yet still retain our natural resources that are critical to our life, which is our trees.
Lisa?
Yes.
30 seconds.
Yeah.
Hopefully I'm answering the question correctly. Denver initiated under former Mayor John Hickenlooper, now Governor John Hickenlooper, a million tree initiative. And the goal over X number of years is to see 1 million new trees come into the city and county of Denver. And I had not heard, Jackie, the term trees being looked at as infrastructure versus beautification, but it's emblazoned in my brain because you are right. So there's an example, makes a city healthier, makes it stronger and more economically viable. And you triggered my memory, and I would be remiss if I didn't tell you, the South Platte River is one of the urban federal watershed partner entities, and just last Friday we were delighted to receive a $350,000 grant from EPA to go into the work we're doing on the river. So we are seeing dollars flow downstream.
Great, thanks for that plug. Last question, please.
Hi, John Hazlett. I'm the Director of Sustainability for the City of Indianapolis. I have Two questions for Jeff. One, can we get Peyton Manning back? We'd appreciate it. Second of all, we have a combined sewer overflow issue in Indianapolis. It's very prevalent. It's being resolved over really the next 10 years, and we're trying to reconnect our residents to these waterways that have traditionally been thought of as open sewers. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about the messaging you used to help people connect with the South Platte, in addition to the greenways you built and the various events that you've featured.
I'll try to do this quickly. I know time is short. We have an initiative at the foundation called PURE, Protect Urban River Environment. There are those that have renamed it Provoke Urban Regulatory Entities, and we prefer the former acronym ourselves, and our goal is to do the very thing that you're talking about. That is to help people understand when they are laissez-faire about their toilets or about their streets or about their curbs. What I think there is a huge disconnect between when you pollute on your curb, you've polluted in your river. It's my belief, with no proof yet behind it, that most people think if something goes down an urban sidewalk and into a storm sewer, there's a big purple recycle bin at the bottom of that with little Oompa Loompas that are cleaning it all up, as versus understanding what they've done. So we're trying to make that connection, because I don't think, I'll reverse it, I think everybody cares about their waterways. I think there's just a disconnect between neighborhood and waterway pollution.
And I think that wraps up our discussion question. I'm going to turn the podium over to Mr. Carson. Thank you.
Well, thank you, everyone. I just wanted to end where we began things today by first thanking our champions of change for the change you are driving and the difference you are making in your communities, and encourage everyone here in the audience, our champions, and everyone online to tell the stories that you heard today. Tell your own stories of the difference you are making. Keep in touch with each other. Hopefully the connections we made today will continue to pay dividends. So thank you so much again, everyone.